And I bear witness that Muhammad ibn Abdullah is his last prophet and slave servant. Assalamu alaikum. Peace, free the land. My name is Sekou Kubasi Abdullah Odinga. I am a Muslim, New African prisoner of war. I am extremely honored by this work of art in support of me and all political prisoners. I'm really thankful to all of you who have taken part in making this CD, alhamdulillah, particularly those who work tirelessly to bring together all the artists and others who have helped to make this the great success that it is. I especially want to thank the love of my life, my lovely wife, Queen, and our brother, Conrad, and friend, Nolan Coward, Mogadishu, whose ideas and hard work this CD brings us. Someone asked me, what war was I a prisoner of war from? My answer is the war of African survival that began when the first African was captured and kidnapped from the shores of Africa to be free or cheap labor for Europeans. The war that became a war of national liberation for New African people. They struggled for land and independence. The Chinese leader Chairman Mao once said that politics was war without bloodshed, and that war was politics with bloodshed. Well, the politics of slavery always had bloodshed. Slavery survived as long as it did, mainly because of bloodshed. The blood of the New African slaves. So that is the war I was a soldier in. But most of our people did not and do not want war. Nor was we or are we ready for war, even though war has continued to be waged upon us since that first African was kidnapped. I think what we first need is a cultural revolution. One of the criteria for a successful war of national liberation is unity. As a people, we are not unified. And cultural revolution should teach us who we are as a people and unify us around the concept that we are a people, a captive nation of people. Once unified, we can then decide if we want to be free and independent nation of people, or if we want to continue to struggle to be part of our captive nation, the U.S. Ultimately, I believe that for us to survive racist America, we will have to become an independent nation governed by New African people. Again, let me thank everyone who made this CD what it is. I love you. Free the land.
Political prisoner.
This is Herman Ferguson. Listening to the words of Herman Bell, a political prisoner, as he asks, what's it like being a political prisoner?
All right. Peace, family. I hope that you could hear that
take notice, even those who oppose you.
Fuck up my shit.
People will even gravitate towards you.
Peace, families. As I was saying, I hope that you could hear that introduction. That was Sekou Odinga, our beloved elder and freedom fighter. He has been home a couple of years now, but this CD, Freedom Ain't Free, which is still on sale, if I understand right, by the Sekou Odinga Defense Committee. This CD was put together as a fundraiser to raise funds for his court battles and for, to help him when he was released. So if you can, please support. You can go to the Sekou Odinga Defense Committee at their email is info@Sekou, that's SEKOU Odinga ODINGA.com. The email is info@SekouOdinga.com, or you could go to www.SekouOdinga.com. And he's also on Facebook as Sekou Odinga. Again, Sekou is SEKOU. Last name Odinga is ODINGA. Excuse me. And this is a great CD, family. So I wanted to put those on because I was listening to it. I was just going to put this on as background music. For, you know, I like to put on music and poetry or something as I speak. But when I was listening to what he said, he talked about a cultural revolution and operational unity, being the framework for operational unity in order to be at war. And I felt that was tied to the subject since we're going to talk about nation building. So anyway, you know, a lot of people have been talking about these a recent interview that our brother Dr. Wesley Muhammad did on the Breakfast Club. Now, they keyed in on a particular subject where he talks about the relative worth of an Africana studies degree and whether it's practical pretty much and whether you should even major in it on a collegiate level. But he talked about a whole lot more than that, so I just want to go over the totality of the comments that I heard him speak about. And I listened to that little clip where he talks about the Africana Studies degree, but there's a whole larger thing, that a series of topics that he was talking about. Now I didn't get to. The interview is about 49 minutes long, I believe. I got up at 2:30 some odd minutes. I was listening to it early this morning, and so I listened to the beginning. I listened to where he talked about Africana Studies, and then he went on to other subjects. And actually, I'm quite surprised. And I'm going to go through the topics, but I'm quite surprised so much was put on the Africana Studies when there was so much more contextually that he was saying without saying, and also that he actually said that should have raised more ire than actually the Africana Studies department thing. So I'm just going to go through that. So he talked about the black man basically recognizing his God nature, and he talked about specifically the God mentality, or understand that you're a God, versus the nigger mentality, which was very good, by the way. He talked about his historical black college and university experience, going to Morehouse and Atlanta at that time, being kind of a mecca of you know, the Afrocentrism and things that were going on at that time, and it was so that the vibration was higher, basically, is what he's saying. And he talked about the decline of campus life since the time that he was in historical black college and university, right? Then he went on to talk about what I thought, and listening to the conversation, more people would have been upset about, because basically what he said in his statements, but he didn't so much as directly say it out, but you could infer, and by the context of what he was saying, that he basically said that an HBCU degree is less valuable than a white university degree. Now, I'm surprised that nobody addressed that in that whole statement. And then he further went on. I mean, then that's when he got into talking about the Africana Studies degree, and whether it's worth it to spend $80,000 to get a degree in Africana Studies, where it's supposed, in his hindsight, something that's not practical and that you cannot, quote unquote, get a job in. Then after, he got past that, and then he talked about the different drugs, right? He talked about marijuana being manipulated, and other drugs. I'm not sure if he mentioned the Molly's or Percocet at this point. It escapes me right now. But he talked about drugs being hyped in our culture, in our hip hop culture, to manipulate the people genetically, basically. Because he talked about the change in the marijuana that, I'm 48, my mother, she just do the little rolling in a white paper. Now folks is putting it in blunts and bongs and everything else, right? But the marijuana of the 70s and 1960s, and he says in his speech, you know, he talked about Louis Armstrong and the Jazz Cats smoking weed. The marijuana of those generations is not the marijuana of these generations. And just the other day, if you go through my post, you will see that I posted an article that was talking about marijuana smoking related issues, and one of the cats I grew up with, Bobby, he said, I've been smoking for X amount of years, how come I don't have this issue? Because they were saying that there's a particular disease that comes from smoking and marijuana, and as marijuana has become more legal, the hospitals are seeing more people come in with this particular disease. And this, I will have to go back and look for it. But I'll put it in the notes. That's what I do. I'll put it in the comments so that you can go back and look for the particular disease. But basically, that wasn't even what Wesley Muhammad was talking about. That's in addition to what Wesley Muhammad was talking about, which he was talking about is the manipulation of the levels of THC in the marijuana to manipulate the production of testosterone and I think progesterone, which is a female chemical of well, actually it's in men and women, right? But progesterone is geared towards your female hormones, and testosterone is geared towards your male hormones. Whereas he said it's geared towards the male drive to push to seek power. So he was saying that that in the marijuana and Molly and these different things, they are manipulating. And it's not just that, though. He's spoken about this, and you can look for his videos on YouTube. He talked about the release of the use of atrazine, which I've often talked about, which nobody really follows up on, and nobody comes to me to ask questions on. Atrazine is a chemical that was used in the growth of corn, the growth of sugar, and the growth of wheat. And these are major crops that are almost in everything that we eat. And what atrazine does, in several studies, atrazine has several studies on frogs and fish and birds and other wildlife. Atrazine has been shown to not only decrease the male sex drive towards the female frogs or whatever animal that they're testing. It's been shown to actually change male frogs, change their desire for women and to a desire or males of the species to a desire for let me back up. It's been shown to change their desire for female frogs to a desire for male frogs, and not only that, to actually change their sexual and reproductive systems from male reproductive systems to female reproduction systems. And so if you have a chance, listen to that part of other speeches that I know he had. One particular session he sat down with James Small on Shanetta TV, and he had an in-depth discussion about some of that thing, which is in his book, right? And the brother's right on point with that. I got to give him credit. I mean, other folks have talked about this as well, but I got to give him props for pushing this out for further discussion and into the chemical and biological assault that's going on against her. So there were some very good things in the comments that he did make on the Breakfast Club. However, because I have a very close connection to Africana and Black Studies and the student and student struggle on the university level, I have to look at his comments and dissect them so that the young people, and I do my videos for young people, for family members, for people that are nurturing young children, so that they can have insight and discuss this with young people. And I hope those of you that are watching, if anybody is watching, that you will take this and use it to spur a conversation with the young people around you about this topic. But anyway, so I'm going to talk today basically, now that I've summarized, I'm going to talk basically about the comments that he made as far as Africana studies. So we're going to talk about the expense. We're going to talk about, this is my dog Boston. We're going to talk about the need to pursue Africana, or if there's a need to pursue Africana studies on the collegiate level. And we're going to talk about, is it a necessity for nation building, which I say it is. And certainly, just to be clear, Brother Muhammad did say that we need to study our history. Now his departure, however, was whether or not it needs to be studied on a university level. And he said, in his comments, he said, if you do study it on a university level, he recommends studying it on the what's called baccalaureate, or, for a bachelor's degree, not taking it to master's or PhD level. And I disagree with that contention as well. So let's talk about it. So first, let's get this out the way. He said, is it worth it to get $80,000, $100,000 into debt to get a degree in Africana Studies? Well, I maintain that for African people, it's not worth it for any degree. Any scientific degree, any humanities degree, or any other level of studies, the psychological, whatever. It makes no sense it even makes sense for white people to get $80,000, $100,000 into debt to this system. And so therefore you have to manage that, have to deal with that before you can get married, before you could buy a house, before you could do so many of the things that coming out of college most people should be doing, right? To build up their wealth structure for their family. So I maintain for no degree is it worth that. That being said, now, do I think that we should be pursuing an Africana Studies degree on a collegiate level? Yes, I do. Why? Because, and again, this goes back into my history. I have a different understanding maybe of this than the rest of folks. Yes, you can study it on your own. J.A. Rogers studied it on his own. John Henry Clark studied it on his own. Dr. Ben studied it on his own. They did not necessarily get their knowledge from universities. And there's many others like them that did not get their knowledge necessarily, what they call autodidacts, meaning they learned on their own. Or they might have had a mentor, but it wasn't necessarily an academic, in an academic setting. But you don't necessarily need to go to, right? But when you start talking about building systems, when you start talk about building institutions or taking over control of institutions in your community, you need people with that area of expertise to be able to create curriculum, to be able to manage and control institutions. You need people with that mindset, with that educational background rather. Now, as far as the mindset, everybody, no matter if you go to school for or not, if you're a person of African descent, you need to be studying Africana or Black Studies or Caribbean Studies, whatever the different names they have for it nowadays. They have racial theory and gender and racism and all these different they have programs now and actual majors that you could go into. But you need to be studying about self in order to free your mind, in order to know the truth about yourself, right? So yes, we need to study it on a collegiate level. Now let's go back again to what I was saying. When I was a student in the late 80s into the early 90s, we at CUNY there was student strikes against protests against tuition. There was a takeover in quite a few of the CUNY schools, right? And that was preceded by a history in the 60s of that led to CUNY even being open to the multiplicity of students of African descent and Latino descent, right? And key to that struggle was the understanding by the students and the staff that supported them of the necessity for Africana/Black Studies programs, because they understood that at nowhere else the information was there, but it wasn't being shared and dispersed. And on the public school or primary level and the high school level, they were not getting the knowledge of self that was necessary for them to have control. Well, first of all, to love themselves, but to have control of the institutions in their community. And they recognized the need for a study of how we used to do things, what happened to us, and how, what's going on with us now. And therefore, we'll be able to come up with some ideas of how we need to proceed to lift ourselves up out of the poverty and the other situations and ignorance, self-hate, drug use, the decline of the families. How can we use, what can we use to elevate ourselves out of the situation? So you had the students of the 60s, that was their demands, most of the demands they had was for Black Studies program or African Studies program, in addition to opening the school up, especially in the CUNY schools, to the people in the community in which the school was located. So at City College, there should be no reason that you're right in the middle of Harlem, surrounded at that time by Black and Puerto Ricans, people of Puerto Rican and Black descent, and they be a minuscule minority of people in the school. The school should be reflective of the community that surrounds it. And this same thing went on in Howard. The same thing went on at San Jose State University. The same thing went on at Cornell University, and Kent State and Oberlin College. All these different colleges around. The students of Black and African descent realized that they were being miseducated, right? Told lies about their history, right? And not talked at all about their history. And they realized the necessity that on a collegiate level, we must have people who are ready, who know and are ready to teach on that level, because these are the people that are going to become teachers. These are the people that are going to go back and inform the community. These are the people that are going to teach our children. These are the people that are going to create curriculum. These are the people that are going to run school boards. These are the people that are going to be, because not everybody that took or majored in Africana Studies went on to necessarily become a PhD in Africana Studies, but they might have gone on to become a lawyer. They might have used it to inform their law profession. They might have used it to inform how they treated African people as doctors. They might how they counseled people if they went on to social work and psychiatry, psychology, right? So you can major or minor in African studies and African studies on the college level, like Wesley said, and then go on or combine it with a dual major, or go on to the graduate level and use it with the other thing. But taking African studies informs how you go about using or utilizing the other majors or skills that you require in college. So, is there a need to pursue? I would say absolutely. Now, as far as nation building, is Africana Studies necessary for nation building? Yeah, and this again is why I played the Sekou Odinga piece. He talked about a cultural revolution. Right now, we have very much what Wesley Muhammad talked about when he talked about the black man and woman understanding that they're God versus the nigger mentality that's being proliferated in our community through hip hop and through the other forms of music and what's going on in the media. We need a cultural revolution, but a cultural revolution is not just going to come out of anywhere, right? A cultural revolution has to be generated by someone, and it has to be generated by that someone with tools, and it has to either generate a new culture or look back at our cultures that existed. And who is going to do that if they don't understand Africana study? If they don't understand our history, they cannot pull something out of their ass, because whatever they pull out is going to be based on the miseducation that we've all been bamboozled with, right? So we need people that understand and have a critical analysis of our history and our culture to be the leaders of this cultural revolution. And comments that I made, Dr. Jeffries, our elder, is having a session tomorrow, by the way, at the National Black Theater. I think it starts at 6 o'clock. The National Black Theater is on 5th Avenue between 126th and 125th Streets in Harlem. So if you can, please go up and support Dr. Jeffries. And I'm not going to speak for him. He can speak well enough for himself. His intellectual and analytical abilities far surpass mine. And I'm humbled to be a student of his. But in my comments, on the post up to, announcing that he was going to have that conversation, I pointed out several things, right? One amongst those things was that, let me take it was that, one, if you don't have people, I'm going to go back to the Cultural Revolution thing, right? On the academic level, it's a little different than studying at home, right? When you're in a college, you can dedicate yourself to thinking and doing the work required for whatever your major is, right? And so not only that, but you also have access to information and resources that you don't have as what's called a layperson doing your own study at home. Right, because there's books, there's art, there's anthropological materials that the average person may not even have an idea that exists, that colleges have in their archives, right? So college, or studying this on the college level, gives you access to all of that information. Now, I wouldn't say to spend $80,000 for it. There's ways that you could get around it, right? Because you could go to a city university college, which is much cheaper than using his $80,000 figure. That's about $20,000 a year for 4 years. You could go to a city university for $2,000 to maybe $8,000 a year, right? And once you're in a city university, you can use your credentials as a student, or if you go on to a higher academic level, professor, assistant professor, whatever. You can use your credentials in connection with that that local university in order to access the archives and libraries of other schools like Yale and Harvard and stuff. And this is where they have a lot of information and spiritual resources and materials that belong to us. So you could, there's ways you can finagle around or have access to that to not spend $80,000, $100,000, $120,000 for school. So, but you can't have access to that stuff unless you're you have some skin in the game, unless you're a student, unless you're a professor or a researcher. They're not just letting anybody walk up in those places. If you could get a recommendation, if you're a lay person, maybe you could get a recommendation from somebody that's on the scholarly level to introduce you so that you can make an appointment to see that stuff. But by and large, you're not getting to see this stuff unless you have that type of credential or association with you, with your name. So there's ways to play the game, and what I'm saying is that you have to be in the academic game in order to get access to that deep level of information that they have that they're not showing to everybody else, right? But also, let me gather my thoughts. So, also in my statements, what I was saying was, and I'm trying to remember right, because I don't want to misquote myself or forget anything, but
when you see me sitting quietly, like the same,
I'm trying to remember, excuse me. So I talked about ways the necessity for people on academic level, right? Oh God, I can't remember right now. But anyway, so I'm gonna move on. So nation building itself. Oh, just now I remember, because he talked about the sciences and particularly he mentioned agriculture as being the necessary requisites for nation building. And I believe those are some necessaries for nation building. But before you even get to being able to utilize the sciences, you have to have the mindset of what you're using it for, right? You have to have the mindset of nation building. And there's a mindset that goes along with nation building, or the desire to nation build, right? Because if it was just the sciences alone, then we have a lot of scientists that work for NASA. We have a lot of scientists that work for private industry, right? And they're working for white people, right? So it's not just having the sciences; it's about having the mentality, right? And the other thing with being a scientist, a lot of scientists are kind of introverted. They put all their mind, they can focus solely on doing their work and put it in, solving problems or whatever, right? But it's nowadays with computers, it's more of a collaborative process. But aside from yourself in a small group, by and large, for scientists, they get things done in a very kind of secluded manner, right? So it's not just having scientists that's going to help us to build a nation, but we do need more people studying STEM technologies, and it's also studying economics, also, and how to start businesses. Entrepreneurship is very important, right? But the mindset that is going to spur rather nation building is not going to come from study of the sciences alone. And this is where Africana studies will come in for us as a people, because we must understand our history. So we need people to help us to bring the information to us, to help us to analyze the information, help us to analyze the larger context, like where were African people, what happened to African people in relation to Europeans, in relation to Asians, in relation to Arabs. What did we have before? What sciences did we have before? And we were the ones that brought scientific understanding to the world. We brought it to Europe. We brought it to the Middle East and Asia, right? From the martial arts on to iron smelting, on to plumbing, onto astronomy, onto building boats and agriculture. We were the first people that had all of this stuff, right? But in the process of the years and the incursions into Africa, it was stolen, and other people put their stamp upon it and claimed it as theirs, and it was wiped out of our collective memory for the most part that we were the originators, or the what's the word I want to use? We were the originators, right? But we were also on the breaking ground. We were the ones breaking ground on these different sciences, right? So we need people with that type of understanding to bring the information back into our community, and then get us organized about what just looking at our old cultures and understanding that African spiritual expression and understanding of the universe is multiple and varied. So we need to look at what we did and take the best out of that and use it, combine it in some kind of way, whether the living cultures like the Ifa tradition of the Yoruba, the Vodun tradition of Gabon and Benin and these other areas, or the Akan spiritual traditions, whatever, there's a very spiritual traditions. There's not, those three are the most often mentioned on the content. But there's also that of the Bakongo people, people of Central Africa, people of Southern Africa, right? So we have to look at the best of our spiritual traditions, and because many of us don't have access to that information, we will have to rely on people that are specialists in anthropology and these other subjects on the collegiate level to bring this information back to us. And this goes back to the importance of having Africana studies, Black studies, people in anthropological studies and so forth, because if it wasn't for the Chuck Davises, if it wasn't for people like my friend Angela Gittins, if it wasn't for Akil Kofani, If it wasn't for Dr. Jeffries and Professor Scobie and Professor Small and Shawshing McIntyre, this Catherine Dunham, if I can't forget about her, Zora Neale Hurston and her anthropological studies of voodoo in Haiti, or Vodou rather in Haiti. There's so many more. We have a new understanding, and there's new information that's available to our people that was lost to posterity. Right? If we did not have people in these fields making the science and the culture come back alive again for our people, we would not have Akan tradition so widespread in America. Oh, Nana Dinizulu, how could I forget him? Chief Bey. There's so many elders in our community that have been able to use their study on a collegiate level and come back to the community and bring the culture back to life for us, healing hundreds and thousands of people in the process, right? Teaching us the living cultural traditions of the drums, teaching us the living herbological traditions, right? Teaching us the living spiritual traditions, teaching us the dance traditions, right? A lot of this stuff has done so much to bring healing back into our community and recentering, especially here in the New York City community. So to say that we don't need people on a collegiate level to study these things is, like I said in my comments, it did a disservice to his own analytical abilities to look at things for what it is. But it also speaks to something that, and I don't want to attack the Nation of Islam, because I like seeing strong brothers and I like seeing the strong sisters in the nation, and they're all my brothers and sisters, right? But it speaks to a troubling issue that keeps popping up in the conversations that that we hear come out, or the speeches that we hear come out of some of our brothers and sisters in the nation, that indicates that there's some level of unconscious, I guess you would say, self-hate that goes on there, right? Because I've heard the comments by a beloved elder where he talks about at one time the black man's hair is a curse, and that the natural state of his hair, which I don't have much of anymore on my head, is straight like the hair on the eyebrows. I've heard comments, and I've seen where in the nation, those who are in the higher levels of leadership are lighter skin, like from my complexion to lighter, and those that there's not that many darker than my complexion in positions of leadership. So I keep seeing troubling things that are indicative of some level of conscious or unconscious self-hate, right? And so back to what I was saying about what he said about the HBCU degree versus a white degree. There are students in various majors. Now, I'm not just talking about Africana studies, but there are students in HBCUs in various majors that can blow students that get the white degree out of the water. So why would he say that a HBCU degree has less value than a white degree? I understand that some white people might feel like that, but why would a black man out his own mouth talk about an HBCU degree having less value than a degree from a white university? So that's another thing. It's indicative of that there's some level of unconscious self-hate or devaluing that is going on within maybe my brother, or maybe just and it's not just in the Nation of Islam too, because I see it all over. I see it when I hear the Hebrew Israelites talking about we're not black or we're not African. The Moors talking about we're not African, we're Moors. Or talking about we are not of African descent, we are the original Americans and things like that. This is indicative of the level of self-conscious hate that we have for things African from our origin. Now, white folks are telling you that not just our origin and their origin is in the original peoples of Africa. All the research is pointing to that. Now there's just some stuff coming out about some finds that put humans in Europe But I'm just waiting for that, because I know before they had Piltdown Man, and that turned out to be a big fraud on the part of European scholars to give them some precedent in the stakes of humanity prior to African peoples. African peoples were the first peoples on this earth. In all of our research, the mitochondrial DNA, the skeletal finds, and so forth, keeps pointing again and again to southern, central, eastern Africa as the first place where humankind was people, and then dispersing throughout the rest of the world. So we have to understand that whether or not we are the first people on the American continents, and I believe that we are, because I believe at some point people travel for various reasons, whether they're running from fights, whether they're looking for fresh land to find food and things food and clothing and shelter. People will get up and move around, and so eventually, yes, people dispersed out of Africa into the other continents, right? So we have to realize that African humanity is humanity, and that it is a primary humanity. It's the first beings on this earth emanated out of Africa. And if we don't understand that, if we don't have that level of pride and certainty of who we are as a people, then everything else is going to be pure confusion, right? We have to understand that. We have to understand that our culture, whether it's from the Caribbean, whether it's from Puerto Rico, is either directly descended from, or it's a mix of African, it's a mix of African with some other people's culture. Because when the Africans came, originally they brought their culture, and they manifested it around whatever their environment was. When they moved into America, the Americas rather, they moved into Europe, they moved into the Arab, Northeast Africa, which is really what it really is in Asia, right? It all shifts according to the environment, and if there are other people, and people move in waves. So we could have came from Africa, and we did come from Africa into other places, right? And then get settled. And then there are other waves of people coming afterwards and remixing with those people. So the culture that was there that became based around that environmental reality gets a new shift of people coming in with new information from the old environment, and they mix that around to create different things. So you have the old mix, you have the Taino, you have the Pacific Islanders, the Australians, and so forth. Their thing gets reshifted up again and mixed with the African as new African peoples come in and disperse throughout the world. So anyway, I could go on and on and on, but I want to try to hurry up. And so let's get into nation building. Like I said, nation building requires a particular type of mindset that you're not going to get from the studying of the sciences, practical though they may be alone, right? And it's definitely not going to prepare you for the necessity of realizing that you cannot create a nation working for other people, right? So you can come out with an engineering degree or